security industry. But there came an era in 2010 when new leadership came in and tried to come up with a turnaround strategy to professionalize the rendering of security services and try to improve the manner in which we regulate the private security industry. So as part of that particular turnaround strategy, the executives of CIRA back then established the Research and Development Unit in 2012. So from 2012, we have been undertaking studies on various private security industry-related topics. But of most importance, we undertook studies that related to subsectors of private security industries where in the main, or if not all, the reports that we have produced indicated that the private security industry is not transformed. So in the year 2017, a panel of experts was established by CIRA wherein when they went around the length and breadth of the country meeting with our stakeholders, in which they identified key issues that needs to be addressed in order for the industry to be transformed. So they produced the document which was called the Transformation Discussion Document, which led to the development of Draft Transformation Charter in 2021. By the way, this is after it was agreed that the Transformation Charter model should be the model used to transform our industry, to make sure that everyone has got an opportunity, in particular relating to the market of private security industry, because the companies that are still dominating the market are if I have to say, the white-owned security companies. So we want those who have been disadvantaged by unfair discrimination also to get an opportunity to be able to compete in the private security industry of South Africa. That is what we are trying to do. So currently what we are doing is that we have the draft document. We have appointed a service provider that is assisting us to facilitate this, to go to the industry, to say to the industry, we have a draft document, look at it and tell us if it reflects your aspirations with regard to how you want the industry to be transformed. So we have been traveling across all the provinces of the country from the 9th of November. Tomorrow we are in Durban, Garden Court, the Marine Parade, where we are meeting with our stakeholders in the province of KZN. Next week on the 11th, we are in Garden Court in OR Tambo, in Kempton Park, where we are meeting with our stakeholders from Gauteng Province. A day thereafter, on the 12th, we are going to be in Mahikeng in the Northwest Province, where we continue to meet with the stakeholders.
I see.
By the way, if I have to add, this is the process that we are only facilitating. It is the industry process, and we want the private security industry to own it.
Okay. Let me jump in here and also find out from you. So you mentioned that there were some key issues that were identified that needed some consideration in order to transform the industry. Are you able to give us just a quick snapshot maybe of what some of those were, maybe one or two?
One that one is to mention was the issue of capacitation of CIRA as a stakeholder within the private security industry, but training was also indicated as a pillar that needs to be highlighted, because it was indicated during the first consultation sessions that we had in 2017 that there is a need to professionalize the industry through training. Therefore, as we try to transform the industry, we must ensure that training is at a higher level so that the rendering of security services can be improved through training.
Let's also look at how the charter aims to impact the security industry.
So the ultimate aim is to ensure that the black-owned small companies can be able to compete at the end of the day. They can be able to be evaluated fairly and benefit out of the system that is being designed through the charter. In particular, the codes, when they get evaluated, they can be able to compete like the previously advantaged security companies.
I see. And just, Tebogo, the other thing I'd like to touch on is, you say obviously you're on the roadshow to consult all of your stakeholders countrywide, and you say that the document as it stands now, the draft document, reflects really the aspirations, to borrow your words, the aspirations of what transformation would look like for the sector. So I'm presuming that in its current form, pre this roadshow, there's also been a lot of consultation in as far as the industry is concerned to just develop some of the contents contained within the charter?
Indeed, Bridget. As I indicated, in 2017, the panel of experts that was comprised of people who understand the industry better went across the country to consult with a lot of stakeholders. But not only that, remember during the time when we conduct studies, there is a sampling population that we target. Those people that we interview are from the industry. I mean, it's part of consultation, if I were to say that, because when you speak with the people of the industry and they tell you that a particular sector of the industry is not transformed, it is the people of the industry that are telling you that. So we are doing it for the third time. But we can never say we have over-consulted. That is why we call all in sundry to come to our sessions so that they can raise their views. But not only those that agree with us in principle, but also those who are having dissenting views. We call upon them to come and raise their views with regard to how we're approaching the whole thing.
Listen, we appreciate the time this afternoon. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there. That was Tebogo Sina. Oh my gosh, it's just left me. Sianego, thank you for that. It just completely went out of my mind. Thank you for that. Tebogo Sianego joining me. He's the manager for research and development with the Private Security Industries Regulatory Authority, and they're embarking on that roadshow as they develop the draft document for the Transformation Charter. So if you are in this particular sector, I'm sure there is an online portal and communications from CIRA themselves as to get that calendar as to where they're going to be in a city and a town near you, so that you can also have your input in what seems to be a very necessary and important conversation. It's just gone 2 o'clock right here on the Full Circle as we take a quick break here, and then we come back and we catch up with Ntiki Mkhize, founder of Mentor, and we look at the art of acceptance, how to let go of what was and what wasn't in order to embrace yourself for the new.
Eintracht Frankfurt plans to have things their way when they clash with the giants of German football Bayern München. They believe a win is more exciting on home ground, while the Bavarians are gunning for strictly 3 points to settle at the top of the table. This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Catch the superb contest between Eintracht Frankfurt and Bayern München on Saturday 9 December at 3 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The summer season is here. That means there are more reasons for you to travel and explore Mzansi. South African Tourism, together with the greater tourism industry, are partnering to make travel more accessible and affordable. On our Tourism Thursdays feature on Beyond the Headline, we will be joined by SA Tourism to tell us more about how to travel and get to know Mzansi in a fun and affordable manner this summer season. Tourism Thursday is proudly brought to you in association with South African Tourism. Arts, culture, and robust conversations with Bridget Masinga.
It is the Full Circle. I was listening to Aldrin's promo, and I'm like, how does Aldrin get to have like tourism fun things? He must share. He must share the load. By the way, speaking of affordable travel, Shosholoza has opened up the routes, the long distance travel routes between Cape Town and Johannesburg, as well as Durban. So Cape Town, Johannesburg, and Durban, you can now do those. It's like 18 hours, I think, from Johannesburg to Durban on the Shosholoza, and then 23-something hours to Cape Town. But it's really, really affordable. It's really affordable. I would love to get to a part where they have, faster trains, not necessarily bullet trains, but slightly faster trains, so we can get there in quicker time. Ntiki Mkhize is joining me now, founder of Mentor, and we are looking at the art of acceptance, how to let go of what was and what wasn't, and embrace the new. How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks, Bridget. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. This is a build-up from a conversation that I was having yesterday the day before with Michael Tabani about holding space for failure in life. And I think this is the flip side of that coin, is the ability to embrace particularly what wasn't, in order to make space for what could be.
Absolutely. So I thought this would be a wonderful topic to end off the year. One, because we're reflecting. And then secondly, we're probably planning on what do we want to do in the new year. And oftentimes working with people and coaching people, I find that what keeps people at bay or stuck in one particular position is an inability to accept things that have already happened. And because we're struggling with acceptance, we're then not making room for new things to enter our lives. And I think maybe just for people to be mindful about that, and to also know that there is an art to how you exercise acceptance. And for people who are wanting to do some of that work, you can take some time to do that in December.
So, okay, when you say there's an art to how we exercise acceptance, how do we do that? Because I get the feeling a lot of us probably struggle with the concept of accepting things for what they are.
Absolutely. So oftentimes when people struggle with acceptance, or the reason why people find it difficult to accept situations, is that we tend to associate acceptance with something with the fact that we are condoning it, or we're saying it's okay. And that's not the case, right? So, yes, I disagree with what happened. I don't like that particular engagement. It's still part of 16 Days of Activism, so I don't appreciate the abuse that I've experienced, and there definitely is trauma in that. So when you are accepting a situation, you're not saying that I'm okay with this, or that I'm coming into agreement with the thing that has happened. The other reason why people also struggle with acceptance is the fact that sometimes acceptance means that you also have to acknowledge the pain that comes with acceptance, and we might not have the capacity to do that. I do want to encourage people and say that what we know from psychology, the research that has come out, is that acceptance is actually the foundation for growth and for change. So when you accept something, you're able to look at the facts outside of your own emotions, and then decide how you want to respond to a particular individual, to a particular situation, and how you want to deal with that going forward. And then the really good part about it, or the great benefit to it, is that when we are able to accept a scenario or experience, it leads to better mental health, personal growth, and overall wellness. So it's really looking at acceptance as a building block that allows you to take the next step in your journey.
I like what you say about acceptance being the foundation for growth. And, for me, I think the importance of these conversations, like you say, moving into the new year and taking stock, it becomes important then to have sort of a balanced retrospective view of your life, right? Not to just focus on how things went right and all the things that we did right and how we can amplify the ways that we did those things right, but also to just closely examine the things that didn't go our way, and perhaps our response and reaction to the things that did not go our way, and what that says about us, strengths, weaknesses, and areas of challenge, and how we can improve on that.
Absolutely, and how we grow from acceptance is by doing exactly those things. So if something happened that is out of your control, yes, it's not your problem, but the impact of that particular thing is still for you to deal with, right? So if, I shout at you or whatever, my response or how I treat you, that's not your problem. That's not your fault. But how that makes you feel, Bridget, is something that you have to acknowledge and deal with. So one, externally accepting and dealing with things that are caused by other people is something to take stock of and think about, why did this person saying or doing this particular thing make me feel this way? Is there a certain past with this person? Are there certain expectations that I have in place? Why do I have those expectations there? Can I adjust those expectations? So have I placed more power in someone's hands externally than in my own hands? And you can begin to kind of adjust some of those expectations and relationship and power dynamics, whether it's in your personal life or at work. And the second one that you spoke about is around yourself, like your own personal performance. So you can look back and go, what are some of the things that have happened that I need to take accountability for? Taking accountability doesn't mean you change what happens, but it does mean you learn. So I can look back and go, you know what? I actually didn't exercise good EQ in that moment. Or I knew I could have done better, but I didn't. But now I have the information to do so I can commit to shift my behavior and respond differently should that particular thing happen again. Or if you're looking at your life throughout the year or over the past couple of years and you notice a particular pattern and you kind of go, you know what, I started the year wanting to be more confident and, speak up at work more, and I didn't. Then you can kind of start going through what are the things that hinder me from speaking up. And if I can accept what hinders me, I can observe it without attaching my ego and my feelings to it. And I can make the commitment to say, I actually struggle to speak up because I think people are going to think I'm stupid. Are people going to think that? No. So next year I can make the commitment to say, I'm shifting my behavior to start doing this new thing so that I can show up in a better way. But you can only work through that process if you accept reality as is and then decide what you're going to control and how you're going to respond to it.
Sure. We fast run out of time, Nsiki, but I think you've given us so much to consider. Perhaps in the final minute, any parting shots?
So the final thing I'll say to people, the journey to self-acceptance, self-development, and growth is really all around being able to embrace what makes you unique and to celebrate that. So if you can find your strengths and align those to your goals and celebrate your accomplishments, you put yourself in a positive space to start the new year on a good foot. So I hope you give yourself grace and kindness as you reflect on 2023. And as you plan for 2024, do so from a place of power and strength, and may it be a good one.
Thank you very much. But I'm sure I'm going to see you next week or maybe the week after before we wrap up the year. So I'm not going to say Merry Christmas as yet. I'll roll the dice and see when we chat to you again. But for today, we appreciate the time. That was Nsiki Mkhize, founder of Mentor. And of course, you can find her on social media. At Mentor is her Instagram handle. It's just gone 10 past. Well, rather 10 to 2 o'clock. My apologies. Time for us to get into a Kids Corner, which will take us to the top of the hour. And then your 2 o'clock news is coming up with Madupi.
Sekhukhune United target a win in their own backyard against Stade Malien FC. Meanwhile, the Malian side refused to travel back home empty-handed. This is the CAF Confederation Cup Group D clash. Catch Sekhukhune United versus Stade Malien FC on Sunday, 10 December at 8:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Chief Albert, the 17th annual Chief Albert Luthuli Memorial Lecture will be delivered by former University of Cape Town Deputy Vice Chancellor Professor Thandabantu Nhlapo on Saturday, the 9th of December. That is this Saturday at 11:30 a.m. and streamed live on the Luthuli Museum and UKZN Facebook and YouTube platforms. Now, the theme for this year's lecture will be customary law and SA legal system, a role for the courts, the legislature, and, of course, civil society. The annual Luthuli Memorial Lecture is a partnership event between the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, the Luthuli Museum, the Luthuli Foundation, and the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And for more information, please contact Uzinhle Nyembe on 032 559 6824. That's 032 559 6824. Or you can email at proofficer at luthulimuseum.org.za or visit www.luthulimuseum.co.za or contact Pam Adams on adamssp@ukzn.ac.za.
The Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies invites interested individuals and stakeholders to submit written comments on their SABC bill. The bill seeks to repeal the Broadcasting Act of 1999 to regulate the continued existence of the SABC, to provide its governance, to amend the ICASA Act of 2000 and the Electronic Communications Act of 2005. For more information, contact the Portfolio Committee of Communications and Digital Technologies by emailing sabcbill@parliament.gov.za, directed to Hanjiera Sali. You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM. This program is brought to you by SABC Education, enriching minds, enriching lives.
My name is Durwetanga Ndlovu. I'm 12 years old and I go to Mokoli House School. Yes, I am going to visit my grandmother with my family. And I'm not very sure for how long, but hopefully we can stay with her for a few days. I think that children should avoid going outside or leaving their yard when they are visiting, as the festive season is very busy but very dangerous as well. When children visit anyone, I'd say that they shouldn't think that there is no work for them, even as a visitor. And they should not get too comfy with their surroundings. Furthermore, they should also treat everyone well as a visitor.
My name is Tene Kuburi. I currently have no plans to visit anyone this festive season. But if I could, I would most probably visit my best friend Jordan. I would probably stay by her house for maybe a week or so. I think children should avoid playing with other people's things when visiting other people's houses and to avoid breaking stuff in their house. Children should also be very mannered and well behaved when visiting other people's houses. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Malintle. Yes, I am visiting my granny. We're planning to visit for a few days. They shouldn't act differently from how they act at home. They should behave appropriately.
Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Kabamba. Yes, I will be visiting around this festive season, but won't be visiting someone, but some people. I am planning on visiting some of my closest friends and some of the family members that live in different areas. Honestly, I would probably visit my friends for maybe 2 or 3 days and the rest of my family members for longer. I think things children should avoid when they're visiting people is to not speak to people they do not know and avoid eating foods they are not sure about, as some of their parents might not be with them when they are visiting around. When visiting other people, children should behave in a manner of respect. They should behave the same way they behave in front of their own parents.
Hello, my name is Muhammad Arham Ahmed. I am 9 years old and I go to Brixton Primary School.
Yes, I'm planning to visit someone this festive season. I'm planning to visit my grandmother until the school is open. When visiting someone, kids should avoid disruptive behavior, such as running indoors, touching fragile items without permission, or being excessively loud. Encourage them to respect personal space, refrain from interrupting conversation, and ask before using any belongings.
My name is Vanzi Shongwane. This festive season, I am planning on visiting someone, and I will be visiting my grandmother. I'm not really sure how long I want to stay, but I'm thinking 2 weeks, a week, maybe. But I think I'll just see when I get there. I think something that children should definitely do or should definitely avoid when they're visiting is don't make the people that you're visiting feel small or say things like, oh my gosh, I want to go home. Ugh, I don't like it here. Because I don't think if someone were to come to your house and they would say things like that, that would make you very happy, especially if the person is really excited to see you and then you're giving off energy that is disrespectful and rude. And I think something that we should avoid is messing around and like making the house dirty or things like that. I think something that everyone should do is you should always respect people's space. I think the best way to behave is obviously to always be respectful. Always say please and thank you. Do not backchat. So I just think the same way you show respect to your parents is the same way you should show respect to anyone that you're going to visit. It's your friend, it's your grandmother, it's your cousin, whoever it is. Just make sure that when you get there, you're not making your parents look bad. You're making your parents look like proper people, like they raised you very, very well.
My name is Kapamba, my son is Anabo, and I'm 12 years old. No, I am not visiting someone. I think that you should behave when visiting someone. I think you should make sure you eat properly and make sure you do things correctly. Thank you for listening.
When it comes to visiting, whether it's a friend's house, a relative's place, or even a magical kingdom, there's some cool do's and don'ts to keep in mind. Let's unravel the adventure together. Now let's start with the do's. Bring a smile portion. A warm and friendly smile is like the best welcome gift. It's contagious and makes everyone feel happy. Magical greetings. Greet your host with a cheerful hello or hi. It's a casting a friendly spell that sets a positive tone to your visit. Express gratitude. If someone offers you a treat or shows you around, say thank you. Gratitude is like a magical charm that makes others feel appreciated. Ask about house rules. Everyone's place has its own unique rules. It's cool to ask what they are, like understanding the magical quirks of a new land. Bring a token of appreciation. If it's a longer visit or a special occasion, bringing a small gift like flowers or a handmade card is like sprinkling kindness on your journey. Now let's talk about the don'ts. Avoid wand-waving doors. Save your magical tricks and spells for outdoor adventures. Inside, it's best to keep a wand-waving to a minimum to avoid any unexpected surprises. Respect privacy. If someone has their own room or special spaces, it's like a magical sanctuary. Avoid wandering into private areas without permission. Mindful volume chums. Keep the volume of your conversations and laughter at a pleasant level. It's like maintaining harmony in the magical kingdom you're visiting. No sneaky snacking. If you're hungry, it's cool to ask if it's snack time. Sneaking into the kitchen without asking is like venturing into enchanted territories. Respect magical artifacts. If your host has magical artifacts or decorations, admire them from a distance. It's being a respectful explorer in a treasure-filled castle. So my dear friends, as you embark on your visiting quest, remember these do's and don'ts.
This program was brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives. Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
The top stories this hour: murder case against the Deep Slot 5 is postponed and changes to the Eskom debt relief plans are adopted. A very good afternoon. The case against 5 men accused of the murder of 7 people during an alleged vigilante attack in Deep Slot, north of Joburg at the weekend, has been postponed to Wednesday next week for a formal bail application. The group appeared briefly in the Randburg Magistrates Court today. They're facing 5 counts of murder. The 7 people were burned to death in 2 separate attacks in the township. The NPA's Pindim Jonondwane says they will oppose bail. The National Assembly has adopted the Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill. It aims to make amendments to the struggling power utilities' 250 billion debt relief plan. It will give the Minister of Finance the power to reduce further allocations to the SOE. The chairperson of Parliament's Standing Committee on Appropriations, Sfiso Buthelezi.
The bill before the House introduces an interest in the Eskom debt relief package to better reflect the costs of this arrangement with a market-related interest, while also striking a delicate balance between ensuring that the interest charges do not negatively impact on Eskom cash flows, while reflecting a fair market-related rate. Honourable members, please note the difference between the Act and this amendment is that in the original arrangement of the debt relief was going to be interest-free.
Opposition parties did not support the amendment bill. The DA's Dion George and the EFF's Mzwanele Manyi raised their objections.
The DA would unbundle and restructure Eskom in a staged approach to establish a diversified, competitive generation sector that could include a number of independent generation companies. Eskom should get out of the generation business as far as possible.
In essence, it's actually not even a debt that we're giving to Eskom. It's actually a bailout. And the political motive behind the Eskom bailout is not meant to address the Eskom debt that has become the biggest threat to South Africa's fiscus and economy as a whole. Instead, the so-called relief is meant to send a positive signal to the market rating agencies.
The Tourism Business Council says it is doing its best to ensure that tourists are safe as the holiday season is approaching. The council says areas like Rustenburg in the northwest have been registering crime incidents in some areas surrounding tourism establishments. Just recently, an attempted hijacking was reported in Rustenburg after a 60-seater bus full of international tourists was approached by suspects carrying firearms. The council CEO, Tsifiwa Tsivengwa.
There has been cases, that were reported by, our members who transport tourists to various locations in the Northwest Province along the R566 route and many other routes around the area. And we have attended to those cases that concern the safety and security of our tourists. And we attended to, a few cases that we dealt with the issues that the tourists have experienced. And we made sure that we gave them the counseling that they need. And we made sure that, they got back to their destination as safe as possible.
And the main Hoppers hospital in southern Gaza has been overwhelmed by casualties as Israeli troops and warplanes continue to attack what they say are Hamas targets. Medics say wards are desperately overcrowded with patients stretched out on blood-stained floors. Israel says it is now fighting in southern Gaza's largest city, Khan Yunis, where Israeli commanders believe that Hamas leaders could be hiding. Jason Lee from Save the Children is near Rafah and he describes the situation there.
It's absolutely dire. There are thousands and thousands of civilians that are fleeing to Rafah right now, and Rafah cannot accommodate them. There is no space. There is no infrastructure available. There's not enough toilets. There's not enough food. There's not enough water.
The top story at 2 o'clock, the case against 5 men accused of the murder of 7 people during an alleged vigilante attack in Diepsloot, north of Joburg at the weekend, has been postponed to Wednesday next week for a formal bail application. For SAFM News, Gimudupi Makhalemele.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
It's the celebration of the century, and you're invited. We've already given away almost 3 million rand with 56 daily vouchers won. Buy a new Ford before 31 December, and you could win a 50,000 rand voucher or the grand prize of us paying for your new Ford. Visit your nearest Ford dealer today. TNCs apply. Individual brilliance always adds a superb vibe to the team. Sami Sohail of Malawi holds the highest batting average in 2020 internationals. Dhruv Surya of Botswana is the quickest to reach 50 wickets in 2020 internationals, and Francisco Kowana of Mozambique is the first player to score a century and take 5 wickets in the same 2020 internationals. Catch these African stars in action of the BNP Group Africa Cup this December, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
My mother said I'm too romantic. She said you're dancing in the movies. I almost started to believe her. Then I saw you and I knew. Maybe it's 'cause I got a little bit older. Maybe it's all that I've been through. I'd like to think it's how you lean on my shoulder and how I see myself with you. I don't say a word, but still you take my breath, and still the things I know. There you go, saving me from out of the crowd. Fire on fire will normally kill us. With this much desire, together we're winners. They say that we're out of control, and some say we're sinners. But don't let them ruin our beautiful rhythms. 'Cause when you unfold me and tell me you love me, look in my eyes. You are perfection, my only direction. It's fire on fire. It's fire on fire. When we fight like lions, but then we love and feel the truth. We lose our minds in a city of roses. We won't abide by any rules. I don't say a word, but still you take my breath and still the things I know. There you go, saving me from out of the cold. Fire on fire, we're normally kids with this much desire. Together we're winners. They say that we're out of control and some say we're sinners, but don't let them ruin our beautiful rhythms. Cause when you unfold me and tell me you love me and look in my eyes, you are perfection, my only direction. It's fire on fire. Oh, it's fire on fire. Fire on fire would normally kill us, but this much desire, together we're winners. They say that we're out of control and some say we're sinners, but don't let them ruin our beautiful rhythms. Fire on fire, we're normally kids with this much desire. Together we're winners. They say that we're out of control and some say we're sinners, but don't let them ruin our beautiful rhythms. Cause when you unfold me and tell me you love me and look in my eyes, you are perfection, my only direction. It's fire on fire. You are perfection, my only direction. It's fire on fire.
It is Sam Smith coming through with a Fire on Fire. That is how we open up the 2 o'clock hour of the show. This one coming out in 2019. Let's Dance was the album, if I'm not mistaken. As per all things, Sam Smith, a beautifully written, constructed, and ultimately performed song right there. What I do love is any opportunity you might get to see him in conversation with a really great conversationalist, where he's talking about his music and the process that he undertakes when he's putting together an album or a record. You really get to understand just how personal the musical journey is for him, and how much of his own stories, particularly his romantic stories, go into every single one of the song. And I guess that's why it makes certain artists relatable to us when they come from that perspective of rawness, you know what I mean? And he definitely, he strikes me as one of those. Fire on Fire is the name of the song, co-written by Sam Smith and, of course, Steve Mack. There was actually a Netflix adaptation of this one for a novel that they turned into a production. But that's a story for another day. Who knows? Maybe her novel, When the Filter Fades, is going to be turned into a production one day soon. You just, I mean, don't chuckle at these things, Janine Gillis. These things are very real things.
Very possible.
Very possible things. Or maybe she's chuckling because she knows that that conversation is already out there in the cards.
No, not yet. We're putting it out there. Candle emojis, manifesting.
Right?
Yes.
I love it. Good afternoon to you, Janine Gillis. How are you doing?
I am so good. Thank you so much for having me, Bridget.
Thank you for coming through. We appreciate it. She is in the studio. Janine Gillis, she's got a a long history in South African media. When our paths first crossed, she was an entertainment journalist, and then she moved on to be at the helm of one of the most awarded and successful teen magazine glossies, 17 magazine, which she steered in beautiful directions. And then she decided that she was sick and tired of canoodling with celebrities and teeny bobbers, and she put her academic hat on. She went off. You got your master's.
Yes.
Like, you were really focused on that journey. Congratulations on that,
Thank
by
you
the way.
so much.
You graduated earlier this year.
I graduated at the top of the year, yes.
Yeah.
So,
how was that journey?
Oh, I have lived many lives, as you've put it. So to go into the business world, and now I'm a pseudo businesswoman, is really a strange and wonderful thing for me. It was challenging in all the best possible ways. And I think it was just, I love growth. I love personal development. So I think it was so pivotal for me to get to that next phase of my growth.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Janine, if you follow her on social media, because she's very active and very engaged on social media, on everything, by the way. She can go from politics to fashion, to the latest trends, to what's happening in pop culture. And you know, because I bring this up because I think you're one of those well-rounded individuals with a strong head on your shoulder. And then you just said, I'm a pseudo businesswoman. Why are you having imposter syndrome?
I think, as you know, having had that long history in media, I think it's so easy to become pigeonholed into certain directions, or being, sort of typecast within certain spaces. And I think if you are the type of person who has an appetite for many things, you are also sometimes hesitant to put on the full mantle of whatever that new thing is. So I like to think of my life as a portfolio, and I love to collect experiences as I go. And you saying just being well-rounded, I think that's so central for me, because I never want to be just one thing, and I think having curiosity and having an appetite for life, that's what I live for. I want to taste life. I want to eat life with a big spoon. So whether that is pop culture, which I'm obsessed with, whether that is business, now all of a sudden I know numbers, whether that is fashion or beauty, or even just psychology and sociology and anthropology of like our interesting country, I want to taste it all.
Have you always been this way, Janine? Really? Huh.
Yeah, I definitely think I've always been this way. I think I've always had a bit of an academic bent.
Yeah.
And I think, much to many people's disappointment, I didn't go on to do a BCom or, become an accountant or become a lawyer, and I think that's maybe part of the journey, wanting to be a journalist, because you get to taste so many different things, through journalism. You get to flex so many different kinds of muscles, and, having that curiosity. I was raised by a bookworm. I was a bookworm. So always looking for the story in everything and observing, and then storing those observations away, so that I could use them one day. Always knew I was going to write books. So that I could use them one day in books and use them in, telling great anecdotes and being a good dinner party guest.
You always need a story.
Yes.
I was actually going to ask you if you knew at the genesis of your career that ultimately you wanted to add author to the many titles.
Yeah, it's a lifelong dream for me. I mean, if you're a kid who has older siblings, generally you do things at a younger age. So because I had an older brother and older sister, I started reading at like age 4.
Oh.
Yeah, and I was just hooked, on stories and telling stories and being interested in the world of storytelling. And I think I must have written my first little story when I was maybe 7 years old, and I always thought one day I'm going to be an author, and I think keeping that dream alive has been sometimes challenging, because at various stages people will say, oh, why don't you write a book? Have you thought of writing a book? And you say to yourself, like, I have nothing to write. And eventually I also got sick of saying one day, or I would want to. And seeing so many people I know go on to write books as well, jealousy is very instructive. Let me put it that way. Jealousy can push you in a direction, because I could not understand how I felt like everyone in South Africa had written a book besides me. And I'm like, guys, when's my turn?
I love that honesty, though. You know what I mean? Because some of us, people don't like to admit that when you see your peers have the courage and the fortitude to do the thing that you've been putting off for the longest time, it does ignite that little green monster starts growing in the corner and it starts eating at you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see it. Yes, it's painted as a negative emotion, but it's just an emotion. And so you have to go one level deeper and ask yourself, what is driving that emotion? What about this is setting off that green monster, you know? And then if there's something you can do about it, do something about it, you know? Take control of what is driving you instead of being led only by that emotion. So you could choose to feel jealous about someone doing something you aim to do. And if you're not going to act upon that, you're just going to become resentful and maybe even destroy that relationship, instead of asking yourself, what is it about that I want? And what are the steps that I can take to get there? How can I use that person as inspiration instead of growing resentment towards them? So that's how I always look at it. Like, I think emotions are instructive.
Listen, she's not just an author. This is not just a session around her latest offering, When the Filter Fades, as we get to know the name behind. Now, the second, by the way, this is not her first book. She wrote a book about 2 years ago, I think, when we spoke last, the Big South African Hair Book, chronicling the story of hair and hair identities in South Africa. And now she's back with a fictitious novel, When the Filter Fades, by Janine Gillis. And it's riveting. I got my copy the other day, so my first copy somehow got lost. I think somebody in our reception area here at the corporation just helped themselves to it, because she was so gracious to send me a copy well in advance. And as we got nearer to scheduling this conversation, I went downstairs to look for it and I couldn't find it. And we sent out a search party for like a week and we couldn't find the book, I swear. And then she sent me another copy of When the Filter Fades that I got into over the course of the weekend. And I'm taking my sweet time reading the book, because it really is a summer read. Let's take a quick break here, and then we come back and we get into the pages of this one, all 260 plus pages of nothing but sassy, salacious, celeb cultured characters. It's so current. 20 past 2 o'clock on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga.
It's the celebration of the century, and you're invited. We've already given away almost 3 million rand with 56 daily vouchers won. Buy a new Ford before 31 December and you could win a 50,000 rand voucher or the grand prize of us paying for your new Ford. Visit your nearest Ford dealer today. T&Cs apply. Various African outfits will display a great brand of cricket this festive season. Kenya, Ghana and Cameroon will play their hearts out in the East-West qualifier of the BNP Group Africa Cup T20 2023. They will all endeavor to clinch one of 4 remaining spots. This is the journey to the finals of the BNP Group Africa Cup T20 2023. Witness the thrilling action from 5 to 10 December, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Going beyond the headline with Aldrin St-Pierre.
But do you think the judgment is implementable?
We definitely think this judgment is implementable. It's all about political will. You see, part of the reason why NUMSA got involved in this application in the first place is we wanted to expose the true agenda of this government. Our experience is that this government is not committed to ending load shedding in the fastest way possible. The fastest way to end load shedding would be to reconnect the power stations which were prematurely shut down when the state erroneously signed deals with international financial institutions to speed up our transition from depending on coal to depending on renewable energy.
This is Aldrin St-Pierre on Beyond the Headline. Arts, culture, and robust conversations with Bridget Masinga.
We are in conversation this afternoon on The Full Circle with the author of When the Filter Fades, a novel by Janine Gillis. And really, it's set in contemporary Joburg. It's a very current book, this one. And I love it because I feel like a lot of South African writers, I mean, the other day we had, she also just wrote a brilliant summer rom-com. I forget her name. Also a journalist.
Zibu Sitole?
Could be. It will come to me in a
The
second.
Thing with Zola?
Yes, The Thing with Zola. Yes, The Thing with Zola. And I love how very current all these books are. And also just the setting of them is something that all South Africans can resonate with. I have one issue, though, with you, speaking of the setting. And I was like, I wonder if she couldn't decide, so she merged the two because she didn't want to alienate everybody. You made reference to the SABC. And then you said that it was in Randburg. I'm like, oh. Because one of the characters, I think it was Lebu, comes to the SABC. And then you describe the SABC and I close my eyes and I can see it. You know, our big cement, concrete, grey buildings, Radio Park, TV Park. And then you go in Randburg. I'm like, but we're not in Randburg.
Nobody knows.
The other guys are Randburg.
Nobody knows the neighborhoods in Joburg besides us.
No, Janine. So I'll let it go because then I was
let it slide.
Okay, no, I think she just wanted to merge the two, make both sides happy. But is it interesting for writers when you write in the now, when you reflect a society and characters that are based on things that people literally close their eyes and they can imagine?
Yeah, I wanted it to feel very real. Down to the restaurants that they eat at, the type of food they eat, where they go, how they speak. I wanted it to be very current. Strangely enough, even though it feels current, I wrote this 6 years ago.
You did?
Yes, I first started writing it exactly 6 years ago. So I have obviously updated some of the things since then, but I wanted people to be able to smell the smells, taste the food, feel the vibe. And I think we live in one of the most fascinating countries on earth. I think our society is very fascinating. There are so many layers. And I think there's so much to explore. One of my pet peeves about South African arts and culture is that we don't archive well enough. There's so many things that happen and we're just not doing a good enough job at archiving it as we're living these lives. So even within the world of fiction, I still wanted to find a way to archive a moment, because again, like South African celeb culture, South African culture, it's so fascinating to me. And so I just wanted a bit of a time capsule, like what does now feel like? In 10 years' time, people are going to look back and see these references and they're going to know, okay, what did it feel like? And that's something that I'm very passionate about. I mean, there've been some books that have come out. I think there was a book about Kwaito that came out a couple of years ago. I think that's brilliant. But I think there's so many opportunities for us to be more intentional about archiving ourselves. Yeah.
And that is something that I think a lot of the sort of the Nigerian West African writers of your generation have done so incredibly well, which is why their stories resonate with readers, across the diasporas. The ability to also merge the two worlds, to bring those dualities into being, because a lot of us in this sort of generation, we're straddling, between the modern and the traditional, the old and the new, and having to find that balance. And you guys now, this crop of South African writers, also picking up that baton and reflecting that in pages.
100%. And you're right. Like, again, jealousy is instructive. The West African writers are just owning it, and they are doing such a magnificent job, not only reflecting their contemporary culture, but how the past has affected the contemporary culture. And I think for us, sometimes the difficulty is in not necessarily only being, and I don't use this pejoratively, but like stuck in reflection mode, but also understanding, okay, the moment we are in now is obviously affected by apartheid, but it's also affected by neoliberalism and capitalism and consumerism and social media and what we're seeing outside of our borders. So how do those things come together, and how is that a reflection of our current society? So that's also part of it. Like, we can't only be telling stories, of struggle, but we need to talk about what does triumph look like, what does our current struggles look like, and what affects our current struggles as well.
I want to ask, we're going to get into the headline news, but our conversation continues on the other side of that. I want to ask you, 6 years ago, you say you started writing this. What comes first in this case? The title or one of the protagonists? Where does the process begin?
I knew I wanted to have a star on the rise, a fading star, and a catalyst character. So I knew I wanted 3 characters. Everything started with the first line of the book. There's a certain hierarchy to fame in Johannesburg.
Really?
I wanted to explore what that meant. And the title I only wrote 2 months ago.
Okay. Interesting. So everything started with the first line of the book. In Johannesburg, there's a certain hierarchy to fame. And if you've ever watched, and you made reference to this on your social media pages, when you were saying that you're coming through, and you were saying, if people are fans of like Sunyati, if people are fans of Gossip Girl, as you say that line now, in my mind, instantly, I heard the voice from Gossip Girl.
Yeah.
Huh. We're going to come back on the other side of this with the author, Janine Gillis, and get into these characters. When the Filter Fades is available at all your reputable booksellers. Make sure to get yourself a copy. Really, it is riveting, and we'll find out more about her process as well as the characters when we come back.
A very good afternoon with the news headlines. Gemudupima Khalimele. Umgeni Municipal Mayor Chris Papas has announced a 100,000 Rand reward to anyone with information that can lead to the arrest of the killers of its chief whip, Councillor Ntlalayan Zandlovu. The case against 5 men accused of the murder of 7 people during an alleged vigilante attack in Diepsloot to the north of Joburg at the weekend has been postponed to Wednesday next week for a formal bail application. And Israeli tanks are trying to push deeper into the city of Khan Yunis in southern Gaza and are engaged in fierce combat with Hamas and Islamic Jihad fighters. Details coming up at 3.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
We are in conversation with the author of When the Filter Fades, a novel by Janine Gillis, and it is a fiction read, a summer read, this one featuring 3 characters that I'm loving thus far. We've got Lebo, we got Lynn, and we got Mbali.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And you say at the genesis, you knew that it needed to be anchored by 3 women. Did you already know, like, sort of, I guess the mock-up of these girls, their age, their life, did you already have a clear picture?
I wanted there to be an innate tension between the 3 of them, because I think that conflict obviously drives the plot. So as I said, I wanted a star on the rise and a star, in decline. And what better way to illustrate that than through literally, influencers and social media are rising. Traditional fame is in decline. So what better way to illustrate that than, the star that's rising has to be an influencer, and the star in decline has to be someone from the quote-unquote old world of celebrity. So, someone who was a TV star in their day. And then in terms of the catalyst character, because I needed someone who's going to drive the story, it had to be gossip. It had to be gossip. It had to be a gossip blogger. And also, I think there was a time when gossip blogging was massive in South Africa, like around 2010 to 2014, I'd say. And the gossip bloggers of that time really changed the landscape of how we think of celebrity. And they brought what we'd only seen in American tabloids and American tabloid culture to South Africa. And I thought, what better way to show how they derive these kinds of, you know, rivalries between celebrities than to have a character like that in the book.
For me, I also think the thing that has a lot of us, as you read the book, you're trying to find certain people. I was trying to think of a diplomatic way of putting that, but you're trying to find certain and see whether or not are they borrowed identities here and there. Can you piece it together?
They are definite composites.
Okay.
So it's not I doubt you'd find a one for one.
Yeah.
But they're definitely composites of people I've encountered, people I know, people we all know, stories we've all read about. But I've been in media for a long time, so these are some of the stories are definitely gleaned from things that I've seen and I've experienced firsthand. And what's been interesting is having so many people who are influencers or in media reach out to me and said, I read this and this is so real. You know, even the opening scene of being at Fashion Week.
Yeah.
And I've been as a journalist, as a magazine editor, you get invited to these things by the designer or the organizers, and you're sitting there to do your job, reporting on what you're about to see. And here comes a famous person, and they have every right within that context to tell you to move. So that's a scene that has happened to me multiple times, and I just had to put it in this book because I've been kicked off my seat, my invited seat at Fashion Week for many a celebrity.
I won't ask who. It must have been during her days at Heat. They were persona non grata back in those days. They got away with a lot of things because, they were cute and disarming in personality, but you kind of looked at them cockeyed when they came in the room like, I wonder what you are about. But as you say, there's so many moments here that hold resonance. One of the other ones is a pivotal moment, I think, for me as I read the book was the night of the launch when the two ladies are, being announced as these faces. And you're right. And I think it just encapsulated exactly what those moments are about so well. And you wrote, tonight turned out to be the event to attend, and anyone worth a write-up had been squeezed into the top floor ballroom looking their glamorous best. It also seemed that every media house had sent their top and nosiest journals and photographers to cover the event. Mbali couldn't quite put her finger on why this particular party was attracting so much attention, but her tabloid instincts told her this wasn't an event to miss. The sharks could smell the blood. Half the room was there to witness a star start her ascent, and the other half was here hoping for an up-close glimpse of a star in decline. Oh, and that surmises just the gist of cities like Joburg.
Yes.
Joburg, New York, Lagos, you name them, where dreams are built and dreams are destroyed.
Yes. And, people, they paint it with a negative brush. You're going to get to Joburg, and Joburg is like this dark hole, this black hole where you're going to lose your soul. But there are ways to navigate the city, and I think part of knowing how to navigate the city is also understanding the unspoken rules. Things are cyclical. You're going to have your come up and you're going to crash, and it's about how you are going to navigate that roller coaster for yourself, because also, as much as these cities can be tough in that regard, you also have cats in this city, in Johannesburg. Cats have 20 lives, forget 9. You can come back from anything. So again, that visceral feeling of like what it's actually like to be in these spaces. I mean, you've been in many of these events. I've been in these events, and it feels like you're in a different world. The stakes somehow feel so high, and you're at a beauty launch. Like, what is that about?
Yeah. No, that's true though. I mean,
Yes.
we laugh about it, but that's the truest reflection. And also, it speaks. I mean, when you look at your character, Lebu, when you look at Lebu, who's the star whose life is in decline and turmoil, a lot of women in this industry, in this country and elsewhere, can also identify with that moment, because there comes that moment in anybody's life who's at the front lines of celebrity where the career trajectory is no longer doing what it's doing.
Yes.
And it's a moment of reckoning with yourself, your future, your dreams, your goals, and where you want to be. And I feel like for Lebu, as young as she is, she starts this journey in the pages of your book in that moment of reckoning.
100%. And yes, there is that sense of you can get chewed up and spat out. If you're not agile, if you don't think of your life as bigger than what others make it out to be, it's very easy to be cannon fodder to the celebrity mill, right? And I think especially if you have kind of put your identity into this, it can be quite difficult to say, okay, I'm moving on to the next thing. So yeah, it is about her. In Lebu's case, it really is about her confronting the end of certain dreams that she had, the end of, what she thought would be an easy path. She'd been set up as a child star from the time she was 11. And, in her mind, she was raised as a famous child. She's always going to be famous. It was inevitable. But nothing is inevitable.
Who was the most interesting for you to write between the three ladies?
So Mbali was the most, I resonated with her the most as a former journalist and as a workaholic. So, she's very mission driven and mission focused, and she's about her money. And that's something that I could write a story with my eyes closed. That was very easy breezy. Lynn also, to an extent, I could write her quite easily because it was very much Jane comes to Josie, a newbie in a big city, a very naive character. And in many ways, I'm also very naive. Lebu was the most interesting to write, though, because I am not a celebrity. I've never lived that life. So having to conjure that up, and also her own traumas, her own struggles, her own mental health issues, her own the ghosts that haunt her and the decisions that she makes. That was difficult for me to construct because I didn't have a frame of reference per se.
And then where does one go when you have those moments as a writer? Where did you go when you had those moments?
I think a lot. I spend and I obviously I'll do my Googles, I'll do my research, but a lot of the writing of and in terms of process, it's something that I've had to get used to. But a lot of the way I write fiction happens in my head. So I spend a lot of time thinking and kind of problem solving. What's the next step? Would they say this? How does the dialogue sound? I'll say it out loud. Does that sound natural? Nah. Would this person say this? Would this person react in this way? So I spend a lot of time just thinking it through, thinking the plot through. I wanted these women to have their own as I said, ghosts that haunt them. I wanted them to feel as if their decisions made sense in terms of their personality and in terms of things that had happened to them in the past. So understanding the motivations for each of the characters. Are they acting out of fear? Are they acting out of, are they driven by money? Are they driven by status? What is actually behind their motivations? And then making sure that the decisions they take are instructed by those motivations. So it always feels like this is something a real person would do given the trauma that they've experienced in XYZ way.
I mean, I'm having such an in-depth conversation with Janine about a really light, beautiful summer read. I'm sure she's like, honestly, why aren't we talking about all the juicy stuff in the book? And I had planned on having this conversation for a while, and I had to say to her, I'd made a promise that I'm not going to ask her about writing some of the saucier scenes in the book. So I'm not going to ask you about that, and you are saved by time. As we wrap it up, you tweeted the other day just some quotes from some folks who had read the book thus far. And you said the best compliments about my book last week. And at Sijabulile_N said, I see myself, my friends and acquaintances in these characters. Sivela said, Janine perfectly portrayed the background stories behind the aesthetics we see on IG. That was Ketiwe Mbata, and then perfect holiday read by Sivelile.
Yeah.
Wonderful compliments.
Yes, it's been so gratifying, and I think it's perfect to pack in your tote this holiday season. You know, a beverage in one hand, a saucy book in the other. So definitely, I think this is the summer read of this year.
Absolutely. In my opinion, it absolutely is as well. And if you are into South African pop culture and, you know, you can name all of your 10 favorite IG girls, you're into that lifestyle, it's definitely the book. It will make for a great Christmas present as well if you've got a teen in the family, well, of a particular age.
16 plus.
16 plus, yes. There we go, 16 plus. Aldrin St. Pierre is standing by to let us know what's coming up on Beyond the Headline.
Aquele.
Aquele.
Aqueli.
Aquela.
Aquele.
Aquili.
Aquele.
Aquela. No matter how you say it, one thing's for sure, Aquele has been your trusted natural spring water and delicious flavored sparkling drink for 25 years. Celebrating 25 years of refreshment and joy. Thank you, Mzansi, for your support and making us your favorite water brand. Aquele, spreading joy for 25 years. Sikukune United target a win in their own backyard against Stade Malien FC. Meanwhile, the Malian side refused to travel back home empty-handed. This is the CAF Confederation Cup Group D clash. Catch Sikukune United versus Stade Malien FC on Sunday 10 December at 8:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Arts, culture, and robust conversations with Bridget Masinga.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Bridget. How are you doing?
I mean, I'm a busy bee behind
Very,
here, but
very busy. Beautiful as usual.
Thank you, thank you, thank you,
Taking
thank you.
beautiful pictures.
Okay, let's
And now they're busy with the airdropping, by the way. If you're wondering, if you want to watch them airdrop each other, you can go onto our Facebook page, SFM Radio, and you can watch them airdrop each other.
What's coming out
No,
today?
it is the people of the now. Speaking of the people of the now, we're going to look at research that has been conducted by the Electoral Commission as well as the Human Science Research Council, looking at youth apathy, and they say going beyond youth apathy. So some of the things that they found, for instance, is, listen to this. The IEC and the HSRC has found that the youth believe voting was pointless as all political parties were the same. 47% indicated that they found it difficult to find a political party that represents their interest. And mind you, in the same breath, our unemployment rate amongst the youth is at 43.4%.
Yeah.
What business do you have not participating in our electoral process?
Listen, I think you and I have been calling out South African youth for the better part of the year.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, at some point, excuses aside, you need to just action something at some point.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, again, if you are not going to decide who must become your leader, somebody else will decide on your
For you.
behalf.
Yeah.
And that person will be the leader at the end of the day. Like the IEC had said, whether it is 3% of the voters on the voters' roll who have voted, Oksala, there will be a government at the end of the elections. Also coming up on the show this afternoon, we speak to the Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. This is after the government of Botswana extended their ban on the import of some fresh produce from South Africa. So farmers in South Africa up in arms. This import ban was first implemented back in 2022, and according to President Bridget Masinga from Botswana, it has now reduced the country's import bill at around 71%. So we'll be speaking to the minister about this because the minister is also in agreement with some of the farmers. So she says she'll be in consultation with the government. And then another story looking at President Cyril Ramaphosa's intention to amend some of the public service amendment bill. And this is in relation to people who have been fired from public service. So there must be a registrar so that we know why you have been fired. Because you know what has happened also? Just a quick one. VBS. There was a municipality in municipality in Limpopo. That municipality's municipal manager actually deposited money into VBS, which was against the rules of local government. They went ahead, they deposited the money. The money was lost, as we know. But the same manager got another job as a municipal manager somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. I mean, similar things could be said about the Minister of Electricity, but I said
the
nothing.
Minister of Electricity, it is the prerogative of the President to appoint whoever he wants to appoint.
Aldrin St. Pierre is coming up at 3 to 6 on Beyond the Headline.
It's in those minds young and aflame, in the reach of those dare to reach, in the possibilities dancing just for you, in the eye and ear of a dream in fever. Yes, it's in hope. Hope and light pulled near and sent afar. Yes, it's in hope. From us to you. SABC Education. Enriching minds. Enriching lives. Individual brilliance always adds a superb vibe to the team. Sami Sohail of Malawi holds the highest batting average in 2020 internationals. Dhruv Surya of Botswana is the quickest to reach 50 wickets in 2020 internationals, and Francisco Kouana of Mozambique is the first player to score a century and take 5 wickets in the same 2020 internationals. Catch these African stars in action of the BNP Group Africa Cup this December, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
Wrapping up our afternoon now with a quick touch base with Funeka Ngewu, who is with Momentum Insure, Executive Head of Claims. It is the festive season, and according to the recently released second quarter crime statistics 2023-2024 report, the South African Police Services has recorded over 6,000 vehicle hijackings, although there is a 2.3% decrease in carjackings this year. The numbers are still high, with most of the hijackings happening in Gauteng, Western Cape, and of course KwaZulu-Natal. Not surprised at those 3 provinces. Good afternoon to you, Funeka. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you yourself, Bridget.
I'm fantastic. I mean, I guess some would say a 2.3% decrease in carjackings is a slight marginal win, but these stats don't mean anything when the vast majority of South Africans have to contend with these issues, and the likes of yourselves as insurers are on the back end, receiving these calls from your clients.
100%. So it is quite a marginal number. So from an insurance perspective, we haven't felt that decline in the volumes per se.
Mm-hmm. In terms of, what we are talking about, what would you say that most people should understand in as far as the terms and conditions of insurance policies when it comes to things like, vehicle assets and incidences like this?
Bridget, is a good question. I think first and foremost, it's important for a client to answer all questions that they are asked when they are taking out a policy accurately and truthfully as far as possible. It's important for you to obviously understand what your policy covers in terms of its terms and conditions. Not all policies are alike. You can be fully comprehensively covered, meaning your car is basically insured for the majority of risks, but there are other covers that exclude covers like theft, where you just have third-party cover only, as an example. So it's important for you to understand kind of what your policy terms and conditions are. Always have have the contact details of your insurance company readily available on your cell phone, so that if something happens, you can reach them quickly. We've obviously, Momentum Insure got an app as well, so you if you're in an emergency, you can kind of press the app and get through to us, or somebody calls you very quickly. But I think the most important information is just to ensure that you are covered correctly, you understand the terms and conditions of your policy, that you've been factual and accurate and honest in terms of the information that you provided, so that there is nothing that can go wrong with your insurance policy.
In fact, when you talk about, just the accuracy of the information, I think this also speaks maybe to some common mistakes that we as the consumers do when taking up insurance.
For sure. So we overlook certain things or don't necessarily view them as important. And I'm going to use like an innocuous example where you have a 20-year-old son, you buy him his car because you want him to travel to varsity and back without needing mommy and daddy to pick him up and drop him off, as an example. And you now insure this car, you buy him like a second-hand, like Polo, worth 100,000. So in your mind, it's just a little runaround car. But you're putting this car on your insurance, and your insurance company is going to ask you who drives this vehicle most often. A lot of parents make the mistake of putting themselves on as the regular driver because they bought the car and the car is in their name. But that question doesn't relate to ownership. It actually relates to risk, because a 20-year-old is more likely to have an accident than a 40 or 50-year-old parent, So when we are asking this question, we are actually trying to assess what premium we should charge you, and not so much who the vehicle belongs to. So in that instance, it's important for you to tell us that, my son is going to be driving the vehicle, and not refer to yourself.
Very important information, and I think a lot of people probably do that because of exactly what you're talking about, the premium.
No, for sure. For sure.
They're like, if I say it's a 20-year-old in a Polo, suddenly I'm paying 2,000 Rand a month versus my 600 Rand a month.
I know. But at least he built up his portfolio. So it will be expensive initially, but over time it will decrease. Whereas it's either that or your claim could be rejected because we have the incorrect information. And even though it's 100,000, it's a lot of money to lose.
Absolutely. Let's talk also a little bit about the impact that things like carjackings have on the insurance industry. And I wonder if does that then get offset into, onto the customers?
So not really, but I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to explain a little bit.
Okay.
So I think as an insurance company, like Momentum Insure, we have a very good safety proposition. So the first thing, especially in relation to hijackings, is that we want to keep our clients safe in these situations. So the panic button that we have on the Momentum app is an example, which is obviously free to the client who is insured with us. We are also continuously looking at ways to mitigate risk. And we recently went through an exercise where we identified vehicles whose theft or hijack risk had increased and advised clients of this. So those clients who were impacted would have gotten an email from us to explain that the theft risk on your vehicle has increased just based on our own experience, and we would have given them advice to install a tracking device. So yes, the tracking device is a contract, or however it's additional money that you need to pay, but it's also to safeguard you and your family and your property in the same breath. So we will look at underwriting requirements on our side to see how we can mitigate the risk for the client and obviously for ourselves as well.
And just as a parting shot, Funeka, we have to wrap it up, but we see a lot of youngsters now buying their first cars, modifying them. Is there advice to this? Because I know certain German manufacturers, that kind of certain modifications even invalidate your car warranty with them.
No, 100%. So Modifications obviously vary, but anything that impacts the speed of your vehicle, so you're putting in nitro as an example, will result in an increased premium. And we're not usually talking small amounts, it's usually quite large amounts. And in some instances, based on your age especially, and the vehicle, an insurance company can even decline to insure you because they view you essentially as an accident waiting to happen. The other mistake we make in terms of modifications is that we don't insure them. So there's a cost to modifying your vehicle. So if your car is stolen or written off, you're not getting back the total value of your car, including those extras that you put on it. This is especially true for non-factory fitted sound equipment as an example. So you have to use a reputable company. Like you rightly pointed out, you can lose your warranties if you don't. You also want to make sure that the company that you're using is reputable and they are also insured against their own negligence. So if they do something to your car, it doesn't necessarily mean that you must claim on your insurance. They should have a policy that covers their own negligence. So there are a couple of things to take into consideration for sure from a modification perspective, but I think we've covered kind of the most important.
Yeah. We have to leave it there for this afternoon, but
thank you for having me, Bridget.
It's a pleasure. And we thank you for the quick catch-up on issues around car insurance. That was Funeka Ngewu joining us, who is the Momentum Insurance Executive Head of Claims. We have to leave it there today. Aldrin Sampier and his team are standing by to take over 3 till 6 on Beyond the Headline. Lots on the agenda, particularly interested in that conversation around young voters in this country, because I think it's time for us to start flipping the script on that one now and just starting to get you to be a bit more proactive about what are you going to do come 2024 in as far as getting yourself up and getting yourself to a voting poll somewhere. What happens once you're in that booth? Not our baby, but you've just got to get up and get there. The conversation continues on all of our social media platforms, on X at Bridget Masinga. Inshallah, God willing, we get to do it again tomorrow.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 104.3 FM in Rustenburg.
Insurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 38462. Now, that's good news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
The top stories at 3 o'clock. A reward for the killers of Umgeni Chief Whip and a murder case against the Deep Slot 5 is postponed. A very good afternoon. Umgeni Municipal Mayor Chris Papas has announced a 100,000 Rand reward